Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Hi, Armin. How are you doing?
Doing well. How about you?
Yeah, not bad. Okay. Excuse me. Yeah, all right, in a kind of slightly miserable British weather kind of way. Yeah, great.
Your voice is astonishing.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's all right. It's okay. I'm used to it.
It's perfect. It's perfect. I've been following you since a while, and everything started from the Warhammer series when my friend sent your video and we started
Ah,
to listen it, and it's like, oh my God, you're doing it so good.
well, thank you. Thanks very much, man. I greatly appreciate it.
It's amazing thing. And for those who don't know, Christopher did the voice lines for Dark Souls 2, Total War Warhammer series, Ancestors Legacy, and one of the recent announcements was Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. And I believe there are a couple of Warhammer series that are still under NDA and you can talk about them.
Yes,
It's
yes,
just
yeah. There are various bits and pieces. Yeah.
so, Chris, let's start our discussion by first getting some overall idea about your career evolution into voice acting. Judging by your LinkedIn, you're in voice acting about 2 decades, and I'm super excited to hear about your career path.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. I mean, I suppose it has been in one way or the other. I mean, almost 2 decades. So I graduated from drama school. I originally trained as an actor, and that's for the first decade of my career. That's what I primarily did. So that was a bit of, I want to say it's a bit of everything, but it wasn't really a bit of everything. It was mainly theatre. That was because of what I was most passionate about, but it was also just kind of the stuff that came my way. So one of my claims to fame is that I was in the same year group as Kit Harington, so Jon Snow and Game of Thrones and all of that kind of stuff. You know, he did Warhorse at the National Theatre, and then pretty much almost immediately after that, went into Game of Thrones. I never got a single sniff at a TV or film audition. I wasn't not quite as pretty as Kit, and I'm fine with that. It's okay. But I mean, my main passion was theatre stuff anyway, and so I managed to just about survive for about 10 years doing that, and I was able to kind of like tour with my work both around in the UK and also abroad as well. I did things like a 6-month tour of Italy, went to the Moscow Arts Theatre, some amazing, experiences. But alongside that was probably really the beginning of my voiceover journey. And to begin with, I never really thought about voiceover stuff until probably about halfway through my training when we kind of touched on it very, very briefly. I mean, we do this kind of like 3 years of actor training, conservatoire training, and it's a bit weird that you only do essentially about a week on voiceover. Uh, and so that's it, which is a bit odd. I think they probably do more now, but it's kind of thought of as kind of like, oh, a bonus thing. You might get the occasional, I don't know, commercial which pays your rent for a little bit or something. And so there was a bit of that I was kind of like aware of, but I never kind of grown up kind of listen. I mean, I watch cartoons and stuff like that, but I never thinking, oh yeah, I could do that. Or I could be the voice of that or anything. Even with, played video games very passionately, but I'd still not really the penny hadn't really dropped that, there were real people who did that and did that on a consistent basis. I just thought they got, famous actors in occasionally. Yeah, so my very first voiceover job was for Dark Souls 2. And that was just through my acting agent at the time. So went to a pretty fancy studio in the middle of Soho. It was through a production company called Liquid Violet, who are still running today, very well established in the industry. And, I was told that, I was auditioning for this half man, half scorpion. So I did lots of kind of like background research about how this half man, half scorpion might sound. And, is there some kind of like crazy monster voice? Because, his body's different to mine and all of this kind of stuff. So kind of like had these great ideas and plans on the voice that I was going to do. And it got to, okay, Chris, if you could do the first line. And I did it. And they were like, okay, could you just speak as you do? I was like, yeah. We were just like, and they were like, yeah, we just kind of think that this half man, half scorpion would kind of speak in your voice. And we were like, oh shit, okay, right, fine. So, all of the plans went out the window, or all of the, oh yes, I've done my animal study, I've chosen my animal, chosen my kind of like sense memory and all of that kind of stuff. Screw that. It was just like, okay, I'll just do it as me. Thankfully, that booked the job. So that was my first thing. And then it was kind of here and there a little bit, kind of like everywhere. But I wrote to a lot of voiceover agents, desperately kind of like begging for a presentation and stuff like that. But I think for 8 years in a row, I probably wrote to the same 20 to 30 voiceover agents based in London, and nobody said anything. Nobody was interested. So that's a pretty good idea of, quite how competitive it is out there as well. And then I did it. I did a short course about recording from home, and that's what really kind of like changed it to me. And from that, realizing that there were different genres out there, and that you could go to the decision makers and reach out directly rather than being dependent on gatekeepers, to being dependent on having the right agent or looking the right way, because they don't worry about your voice. They don't worry about your face in that kind of thing. So that's one less thing. You don't have to look like Kit Harington. Fantastic. This was obviously the thing holding me back. And that's where it got kind of serious. And then that led to, it being kind of full time from like 2017 onwards. Yeah.
Wow. What a journey.
It's quite a journey. Yeah.
Speaking of video gaming, what are some challenges you face when you do the voice acting for video games compared, for example, to other forms of media? Like compared to doing the voiceover for Warhammer 40K books.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I would say especially when you're doing extreme characters, extreme monster kind of like stuff and things like that. I mean, you got to go for it, and you got to go for it for probably 3-4 hours at least. The people I worked with, Creative Assembly, who do all of the Total War games as well. And they're very experienced in terms of knowing when you need to vocally rest. And also in terms of like, let's start with the conversational stuff, the bartering or whatever, before we then go into the full-on screams and the deaths. We'll save those to the end and all of that kind of thing. So there's that level of just like sheer extremity that you need to be able to do sustainably, and at the same time not screw your voiceover, because you've got to record something else the next day, especially if you're a full-time voiceover. If I was just a jobbing actor still, that would be less of an issue, in all honesty, because I might be on stage or I might be filming the next day, but more than likely I might not. Whereas as a full-time voice actor, I know it will be stuff that I've got to record, maybe even later that same day in the session. And so if they're like, oh yeah, we just want to pick up on this, explain a video that, you recorded for us last week. And I'm like, oh, okay, sure, that's fine. My voice hasn't changed at all in any way. It's all okay. Yeah, that might be a bit of an issue. So I think sustainability, I think, is the key thing in being able to look after your instrument and all of those kind of things. Whereas with audiobooks, it's not quite so full on. Sometimes occasionally you might have kind of like audio dramas, which kind of split the difference. But generally when you are like the narrator and you're doing all of the different character voices, there's a kind of suspension of disbelief that there's only one person doing it, or only a few people doing it. And so therefore they're not going to go full on in. Some people can completely transform, but there's a balance. Because, if you scream and shout, one side of a conversation, but then you've got to cut in with the other person as well, who may not be screaming and shouting believably. So, you are literally talking to yourselves for sustained periods of time. So there's a different thing. And so it's less, I wouldn't say it's less physically tiring, but it's tiring in a different way. Whereas with audiobook narration, you may be doing 5 hours, 7 hours of recording all in across the entire day. So it's just you've got to sustain that in a different way, because it's like if you go to, a party or anything and you've got to talk over the music, after a couple of hours, you feel it afterwards. there's the same thing of like, if you're just having to talk nonstop and do all of the voices for 7 or 8 hours, regardless of how well you train your voice, you're gonna feel it. So there's a different kind of vocal stamina that's required, as opposed to the vocal extremity. And the fact that I think, especially with the video game stuff, you got to go purely for the emotion very often. Whereas with audiobooks, I mean, sometimes a narrational voice may or may not have an emotional stake in what is happening, but it's normally that's your time to kind of like chill out and step back from the slightly more intense emotions. And so it's kind of like managing that in a kind of like a different way is, I suppose, the main thing. Yeah.
I see. So saying this way, like when it comes to the video gaming voice acting, it's completely different thing, as we just said. And for example, I've heard a lot with other professionals in the field that they're taking about 3 to 4 weeks to read all the script when it comes to, for example, doing a voiceover for the Marvel Spider-Man animated series. Does kind of this process exist when it comes to the video gaming? Did you need to go all over the script to just voice over a small part?
They don't send it to you. I mean, it's the reason why, like, the speeches and stuff that I do on social media, like, I don't look at the stuff originally beforehand. This is because it's practice. It's not me going like, oh, this would be a really interesting experiment of like not checking everything in advance. But there's an exception. The exception is Baldur's Gate, which everybody is, talking about right now. And I think for the people who were the companion characters from the get-go, they got a lot of the script in advance for them to read through for character arcs. But 99.9% of the time, your first experience as a voice actor in a video game of the script is, we're recording. Here's the script.
Wow.
Let's go. So for Rogue Trader 40K, which I've, is a CRPG, so similar, it's a narrative based. Yes, you've got those combat sequences, but it's very narrative based. My character, Heinrichs, is a companion character. You can romance him, you can kill him, you can do something, whatever you really want with him, and all of those kind of things. I had an understanding of that character, but all of his lines I didn't get in advance at all. It was like, here's a spreadsheet, here are all of the lines, here's a bit of context. The writer is also on the line as well if you have any kind of questions, but we kind of ideally want you to not have too many questions, because we've got to record all of these lines as quickly as possible, as well as being good. So if you could give us 2 to 3 takes of each line, and then let's go, and let's go, and let's go, and let's go, and let's go. And they'll give you like, oh no, well actually, actually the person that you're talking to has just killed, someone that you feel indifferent about. So that, hey, what the hell are you doing, is actually completely different instinct behind that. You don't know that because the game hasn't been built up yet. So they'll very often, they'll give you some character art. They'll give you some general traits. They'll go, this is kind of what the character is about. But whereas, in stage work and with audiobooks in a different degree as well, where you read the entire thing and then you go back and go like, okay, so what does everything tell me about what this character is? There's none of that in the video game stuff. It's like, okay, well, finding it on our feet, are we? Great. I'm gonna hope that I get lucky. Oh, but it's very much collaborative, because you've got to depend on the voiceover director, to steer you, to kind of know and trust that you're on the right track. And if you need to be steered, they'll steer you when is required, because they require the greater awareness and context. But you're like a bit like, I don't know. What happens to this character? I didn't know that my character in Rogue Trader 40K was romanceable until we got to a script, and I was like, oh, these are romance. I was like, because I'd never thought, like, well, no one said like, okay, Chris, so this is how he fits into the entire world, and he's one of X number of romanceable characters, and he's only romanceable by women. He's not romanceable in gay relationships or anything else. No idea at all. I'm got to be good. I just like that. So use your imagination, live in the moment, make a big bold choice, If you're doing 3 readings of it, give the directors options as much as possible. Whereas with an audiobook, it's kind of like, you kind of got to get it right. Whatever right is, you make a choice, but you don't go like, here's 5 versions of that chapter. Because no one's got the time to do that. So everything needs to be very fixed. Whereas with video games, it's kind of like, here's 3 bold choices. Hopefully you got what you need, right? Okay.
Yeah.
It's a very different, it's very different way of existing as a result.
It might be very stressful also because you...
Yeah, it's massively. I mean,
it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, it depends who you're working with. And thankfully, you know, I've only worked with great people. In terms of with the video game stuff that I do, it's like, I've never worked with someone with a bad director. It's someone who hasn't known and taken that responsibility. And if I've needed to have a burning question, then you know, I've been able to ask it. But it's and so therefore I actually feel probably safer in that kind of scenario than I do when it's an audiobook and it's really just me. Like, because with audiobooks, you know, I've just finished an 8-hour audiobook. And I send the very first kind of like prologue for the approval of the author, and they may give me some character notes and stuff like that. But then for the next 7 hours of recording, which is in actual fact about 3 times that in terms of reading it a couple of times, making all of the notes and annotations, then recording it and then editing it, it's all down to me. And if I make a wrong decision, then it's stuck in there and it's going to be a real nightmare to go back in and pick apart. So there's a lot more kind of trust, whereas there's no live feedback until like three weeks down the line, when you either get a bunch of notes back or more often than not you don't, because they feel as if they've hired the right person and they trust you to make those decisions, and it's fine. So yeah, it's a different prospect.
Yeah. But when it comes to the project, like you mentioned that you had the blessing to work always with the good guys in the industry.
Yeah.
Like, is there any other factors that you're considering when it comes to looking for a project to work on?
I mean, money, obviously. Yeah, just like as how many barrels of cash are you gonna deliver to my house in advance? Then we're talking. Then it's fine. Then, you know, you could be advertising cigarettes for small children. I don't care. I just like, bring it on. Obviously, that's my good old British humor there. Just in case anybody was just for clarification. Not really down with the whole cigarettes for the kids stuff, but never say never. But I mean, other than that, for me, it's just things that are creatively interesting, as well as first of all, it's kind of like making sure that I can keep doing what I'm doing. That, you know, that's the main thing. Enough so I can pay my mortgage, buy food for my cat, for my wife, you know, nice things like that. But then beyond that, and the financial stuff and the terrible superficial stuff like that, it's to do with creativity and, you know, being able to kind of like express and explore interesting characters, which may teach me a bit more about myself and the world around me. That's always exciting and good. So like people sometimes go like, well, what would be your dream franchise to work in? And I always used to say like, well, if they do another Fallout New Vegas game, or if they do another, which they are obviously, another Mass Effect game, and I'm like, well, yeah, of course that would be. But I would also have to say that what would really most excite me would be to originate a role entirely. Like a completely new role, a bit like Heinrich's in a way. It's kind of like having complete possession over a new story, but being able to, you know, going on a real massive kind of like journey. That's the exciting stuff to me. It's the stories that I don't know about yet, and which is why I actually find the social media stuff that I do such a joy, because I literally ask my audience, like, tell me what I should be doing. And like so many of the recommendations, and that includes like the Warhammer 40k speeches that I've done, because I've only read 12 of the books. I've not read all 67 of the Horus Heresy, let alone any of the others. You know, So getting recommendations of that, or I'm not a big anime follower because I'm a 42-year-old man with responsibilities. I mean, not that there aren't lots of anime fans who do, but anyway, I'm like, yeah, I'd have no knowledge of, all animes or anything. But then I was suggested some speeches and some writing, which completely blew my socks off. And so being introduced to those worlds, or when people send me kind of like audiobook stuff or anything else like that, it's kind of, it's that exciting, the real new creative work that I didn't even know that was out there. That's the stuff that kind of excites me. And so that's the kind of stuff that I want to look more to explore in terms of my kind of like future work, kind of stuff that takes me out of my comfort zone a bit, maybe.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. So imagine you're in Mass Effect game.
After I'd stopped crying. Yeah.
After you stop crying.
Yeah.
Like for me, the voice acting field is a bit new because I don't have very much relative or friends working there. And I believe a lot of people had some kind of misunderstanding about how all the stuff working on voice acting industry, like how the process is going from, for example, you got an invitation. They just found you on YouTube and sent you the email. Hey, Chris, we want you on Mass Effect game. Like, what are the steps of coming to the point when you actually start to work with them? And then you go to the studio and you start doing all that crazy things that you described.
I mean, I doubt they'd just see you on YouTube, though they might, and sometimes they do. I mean, there are literally, there's examples of people who.
That's life.
Yeah. I mean, there are people who are in the God of War, the latest God of War game. People are hiring people who are on social media, people who are voice actors, but also YouTubers and stuff like that. So never say never. And I mean, I have been hired for stuff purely off the back of my social media stuff. So people do reach out. So yeah. The most traditional thing is normally that for video games specifically, for video games at the level of something like a Mass Effect or whatever, they almost always go through agents. So then there's the thing of like, you've got to be represented by the right people in order to be able to be considered for the right thing. And then maybe you get the audition, because I'm sure like loads of people are kind of like submitted for it. So you'll get a script sent through. The thing with video games is because it's all hush-hush and super confidential, they'll never tell you what it's for. And they'll usually change the script in some way, shape, or form to try and put you off what it is. And I've seen video games do that more successfully and less successfully. For example, I pretty much knew I auditioned for a significant role in Baldur's Gate 3 and didn't get it, but I kind of knew what I was auditioning for, even though it was going by a different code name. So that was an interesting experience. But yeah, and then they give you a character sheet essentially, which will be, some character art, maybe a little bit of background information about the character. And then they'll normally give you, it could be 4 lines. It could be a couple of pages, but quite often it's just like 4 or 5 lines. And you've got to do no more than 2 or 3 takes of each line. And then that's it. And so there's the art of auditioning for it. And then you send that in. And from that, they'll shortlist. So the thing about the auditioning really is to try and get a sense of not just how best to do those specific lines, but I would say also to get a sense of the range of the character. It's likely they're not going to be screaming all of the time or just in one emotional state all of the time. So it's kind of finding that balance of, can you find some of the different notes in the character as well as be believable, as well as, factor in, their physicality and how they breathe and all of that kind of stuff. So it's not just about doing the words that are written right, but to kind of get a sense of the believability of the character actually existing on the other side of the microphone.
Yes,
I think that's the main thing. And then literally you send that off, and then you desperately try and forget about it, because they could come back next week and say, "Yeah, we love you." They could come back and say, we're interested, but we need you to record some more stuff." Or you might just not hear back. almost you'll never hear back a no, because they don't have the time to tell everybody no. So you might not hear back for months, assume it's dead, get over the fact, mourn its loss, and then it suddenly comes back and you're like, oh my God, they do want me. Oh God, they want me to, re-audition or whatever, or change something different because, maybe they planned to do all of the recording, but then something else came up and everything has been pushed. And this is the only reason why they're, checking your availability now and all of those kind of things. So all of that happens, and then depending on the video game project, I work also on a lot of indie stuff, but for like Rogue Trader is kind of on that balance of like it's technically an indie title as opposed to a AAA title, but I've done so that I recorded all from home here, and that was like there was a voiceover engineer calling in from New York, but then I think it was the actual director was calling in from elsewhere in Europe as well at the same time. But quite often for the AAA stuff, they want you in town. They'll take you to an external studio because they don't want you to be thinking about any of the technical side of things.
I see.
At all. It's purely, and maybe that's also because they might want to do some facial capture or some mocap as well. But regardless, it's kind of like, first of all, everything has to be highly confidential, so there's no issues in terms of file sharing, but they don't want you to be going like, I've got to do a shouty bit for a bit, so I've got to turn my gain down, sorry, and all of that kind of stuff. Whereas, so having a voiceover engineer who can like ride all of those things and make sure and can log all of the various different takes and knows which ones that they want to use and all of that kind of stuff, it's easier to be in person. And also, it's quite good to have someone else in the room, such as it is. So that's kind of like a potted insight about kind of like how it works. There are so many different ways of actually getting the audition. And then from the audition, you got to kind of like take a big, strong guess and in hope, really, essentially.
Wow. And like, so this is the way of dealing with rejection in the gaming industry? Just mourning it, crying a bit?
Yeah. Well, I mean, trying to get it over with as quickly as possible. So I would say the luckiest / most successful voice actors that I know are the ones that are auditioning the most. More often than not, I mean, I think a good strike rate is probably, say, if you're getting 1 in 9, 1 in 10 auditions, if you're booking one of like that, then you're doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, a kind of like, on the one hand, continue to get as good as you possibly can at the act of auditioning, so that you can get that ratio down. But the other thing is making sure that you're manufacturing as many opportunities to audition as you possibly can. Certainly with video game stuff, anyway. With other types of voiceover work, you might not need to audition or audition quite so much. But for this kind of stuff, where people are hiring actors first and foremost, and video game voice acting sounds sexy and cool, and everybody's playing it, and it's this huge and massive successful industry. Apart from when they're sacking and letting loads of people go, but don't worry about that. That's fine. Anyway, isn't it wonderful? It's so maximizing the number of opportunities, also trying to adjust your hit rate. And then the thing that's kind of like the acting has taught me before voice acting was kind of like, you got to make a big, not necessarily a big, but your own choice, bring yourself to the part rather than second guess what they want you to do. And then it's not possible. It's not possible for me to forget these jobs. I literally can't disassociate in that way. So it's just having a bit of a process of like, how do you deal with it? How do you put that to a side? For me, it's about making sure I keep busy. So I've always got something else to do. So the content creation and the other marketing and that kind of stuff, it gives me like, you can't mourn or worry or question too much because you've got other things that you need going with. All you can do is go like, I've given it my best shot, but maybe they decided it needed a different accent, or they're actually changing the gender of the character, or you remind the person who's listening to the auditions of their ex-husband who they really didn't like, or anything beyond your kind of control. Other than that, by all means do workshops and work with coaches and voiceover directors so you can have an objective sense of how are you doing? What are and so I think continuing to kind of like working with coaches is a good idea, but otherwise, rejection is the name of the game. And other cliches are available. The job is auditioning really. The job is to audition, give your best with the expectation of absolutely nothing, and then move on to the next thing and make yourself readily available as quickly as possible. And then if you actually book something, that's kind of a bonus, because by that stage they've already said, we think you're on the right lines. You don't need like a great deal of work to get there. Then that bit is much easier because you don't need to learn the lines either. So happy days. Yeah.
But like, what are some aspects of voice acting that people might be surprised to learn to? From perspective of just wait.
Generally speaking, I think it's just the fact that you need to run it like a business, which is the really kind of like, boring, mundane thing, but it's true. Like if you want to be a full-time voice actor as opposed to someone who just does it occasionally, and there's nothing wrong with just doing it occasionally. I think you just need to be clear about that. Because, the vast majority of time, what I'm doing is I'm marketing in one way, shape or form. I'm hustling, but, trying to find different ways to be able to hustle in a bearable way without wanting me to go like, oh God, this is so depressing. Because that's not, what I want to be spending the vast majority of my days doing anyway. So finding as good a way as possible to hustle. I think there's a technical aspect to it that I say increasingly, you just need to be on top of. It's just like it's too competitive. Again, if you're an occasional voiceover actor, this isn't so much of an issue. If you only voice for big AAA video games and you're brought into a studio all of the time, then it doesn't matter so much. But again, if you're a full-time voice actor working on a whole different variety of kind of like genres like me, then I need to make sure that my studio is great. And if there's a technical issue or anything else like that I can work around it. Or, if I've got I'm working on a corporate explainer video and a client asks, oh, can we listen back to this, but with like the video footage that we've sent you, and could you time it to, and all of this kind of stuff, that I know how to do that, as opposed to losing my shit and going, no, that kind of thing, or being able to negotiate something one way or the other. So I think having that kind of like business side and the technical side of thing is probably the main thing. But otherwise, people within the voice acting industry have completely different careers within it. Working full-time on audiobooks is completely different to working mainly in promo, or mainly in commercial, or mainly in video games. I've really kind of like embraced being able to kind of pick and choose, and at different times I've done different things. Like I've been doing this full-time for 8 years, and I've only really started doing audiobooks from last year. But now I'm really enjoying doing those, but it's a very different kind of like challenge. Whereas I know there are some people who only do audiobooks, and that's partly from a creative side, but it's also partly from a kind of a lifestyle choice side, if that makes sense. Whereas other people would never touch an audiobook to save their lives. And so it's just kind of understanding what works best for you. Because like with a lot of audiobook narrators, a lot of the ones operating at a certain level, they know the next 5 or 10 books that they're doing. And so they're actually spending all of their time reading the book, prepping the book, coming up with the characters and finding the voices, doing the recording. And that's it, really, rather than, someone like me who still does work a lot in the corporate thing, where I probably only spend about an hour of the day actually recording. And the 6 or 7 other hours is actually doing marketing or creating content or, all of those kind of things to get more and varied opportunities through. So, and there's no one approach to the career of voice acting, which is better. It's just different things will suit different people at different times, if that makes sense.
Aha, I see. So basically, how many hours do you work? Like 16?
Too many. I mean, if only.
Describe your typical day. Like
Typical day.
yeah,
Typical day. Typical day is I am one of those people. I get up at about 5:30 in the morning. But that's because I need to. I kind of like have breakfast and then I need to work out before I kind of like I'm in my right mind about what am I doing. Oh shit, no, I'm already doing it. Okay, great. Because otherwise it just doesn't happen later on in the day. So I've got a shed at the end of our garden, which has like lots of free weights and stuff like that I can use, as well as a gym locally. So I do that. But it also, I'm trapped indoors for the majority of the day talking to myself. So it's good to get some kind of physical activity in there.
yeah.
And then I probably by about like 7:30, I spend an hour on social media. Specifically, I spend an hour on LinkedIn, where I will post something. I will engage with people who I know, people who have commented on my stuff, comment on other people's kind of like stuff. So I literally have a timer, a physical timer, and I go bang, and that is from 7:30 till 8:30 or 7:15 to 8:15 or whatever. And that means that I've done at least a minimum of 1 hour's worth of marketing that day. That's my minimum, because my main aim is to make sure that I do probably about at least 10 hours of, just engaging on LinkedIn per week. And reaching out to different people and connecting and all of that kind of like stuff, and then content creation on top of that. But then other than that, it can be absolutely anything from that point onwards all the way through until normally I try and have a hard out at like 6 p.m. Just because quality of life, what are you doing it for? I have a wife and a cat, and I want to spend time with them as well. Rather than there will be exceptional times when you're dealing with a client in a different time zone and you've got to record in the evenings, or you've got to work with a coach in the evenings or whatever, stuff like that. But I try and keep that manageable. So I try and I other than that, it's just throughout the day. Sometimes there'll be a lot of recording. Sometimes there'll be more marketing. Sometimes, like every Monday, I try and kind of like batch record as many of the speeches that I do for social media stuff as possible. That's not always possible, but I usually do try and do some of that just so I'm ahead of the game. But yeah, other than that, it's just kind of like trying to be as kind of like flexible as possible with that kind of stuff. But and I know, because it is a physical thing. If I burn the candle too much, then again, coming to that vocal stamina and stuff like that, I can hear it. I become aware of it, and that can be an issue. Similarly, if you run yourself into the ground too many times, and do burn yourself out, that physical thing means that it's going to affect the product that you're putting out, and that's an issue. So it's the reason why I exercise, and it's the reason that, I try and look after myself as much as possible. Don't get me wrong, like I was working every hour that I possibly could when I was single on my own and was just trying to make this business work. Every spare hour, and you still get all consumed by it because it's your business, it's your thing, and no one else is going to care about it as much as you do. So your mindset is, you're always thinking, you're always finding a struggle time to detach. And I would be lying if I said that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so zen now. Like after 6 o'clock, I'm never thinking about work. No, of course I'm not. I'm always checking my emails, going, oh shit, what's this thing? Oh, I've got to, so that continues on. But I try to have a bit of balance. And if I have to catch up at weekends, I'll catch up at weekends. Totally open that. Like I worked 5 hours yesterday on Sunday because I needed, because there were a couple of big projects. I said yes to them when I could have not, but my wife was away from the weekend seeing family, so I was like, fuck it, I will cash in And so I've done it, and that's my deal with the devil. And it means that, I can afford to, when Valentine's Day comes around, go, this meal is on me, as opposed to, let's go 50-50. There we are. That's the lifestyle choice.
But was it hard to keep the relationship while working all this much up?
What was the relationship with my wife? Yeah. Yeah. My wife is amazing, obviously, so that's good. That always helps. And she's creative in a completely different way. So that always is useful because, she works in accessories, designing accessories and that kind of stuff.
Oh,
And so she has an understanding of like the creative process and how how it can be quite chaotic at times. And she's interested in what I do, but she doesn't do what I do. And I think that's quite healthy to have a bit of distance.
yeah, you got a golden ticket.
Yeah, because otherwise I've dated actors, and I'm sure I've been part of the problem as much as they have been, in terms of like, you just talk about work in some way, shape or form so easily. It's just so easy to go back into. And so it's just being kind of like mindful of that. So she's respectful and understanding, but she also, has that thing about like, I think you need to take some time off. I think you need to, So I think it's something that you're constantly having to come back to and kind of like touching base about. What are you doing it for? Always like, yeah, are you mainly money orientated? Are you mainly project orientated? Where on that spectrum is it? Because it's very easy to mistake other people's dreams and other people's goals for your own. And then you pursue those, and then only halfway down the line do you go like, oh, do I even care what I'm doing? Oh shit, no, that's it. And then you've got to kind of like course correct. So I think just being aware of that, I think, is always good. Certainly with something like video games, and people kind of maybe assume it's very popular. I think video games is sexy to do. It sounds like a sexy thing to do. And it can be, don't get me wrong, but it was a good reminder to me that like, I was seeing lots of people like at the end of the year going like, oh my God, these are all of the games that I've been in 2023. And like, they'd all been in like 50 more games than I'd been in that year. I'm just like, oh my God. All of the imposter syndrome kind of sets in. And you're like, oh, I'll always be shit. La 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 la. And then I did take a step back of all of the games that they did and all of this kind of stuff. Are those projects that you'd actually like, oh my God, I really want to work on them? Like, honestly, is that what you're about and those kind of things? And in actuality, I was like, no. Oh, that's good. That's good to know. That like, there are certain types of video games that I'm very excited to work with because of the stories they tell and all of those kind of things. But there are also vast other multiple types of video games where it's like, I'll take it as a gig because it sounds like fun, but it's not the best paid work in the world. Quite often the opposite. And if it's like, actually, it doesn't tick a lot of boxes in terms of exciting me from a creative point of view, then it's not something to be worried about. So I'm like, okay, that's good to know. So what is it that I am really interested in, and what can I do to make sure that I'm true to that, as opposed to, oh my God, that person just did that amazing, sexy, exciting thing. It sounds so fucking good. And then, the actuality of it is like, it's all right. So I think just reminding yourself about that, I think, is always good.
Yeah, fighting against the imposter syndromes.
Yeah. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I've not nailed it. It's an everyday fight. But but I think being able to have that level of awareness and just take a step back, I think, is always just to check in with yourself about what kind of work are you really after and really excited about. And I think that's always a good exercise to put yourself through.
Yeah. And by the way, by speaking about the sexy thing regarding the video games, I think that a lot of people don't know what is really going on behind the development processes. Like if you watch, for example, the first God of War, the new one.
Yeah.
But they put a video, the 40-minute video, how everyone leave their families, go to Santa Monica,
Yeah,
live
yeah.
there a whole year.
Yeah, no, there's a whole kind of feature-length kind of documentary on YouTube, isn't there, about it? And also there's a recent one that Naughty Dog released as well called there's Grounded and now there's Grounded 2. So the making of The Last of Us Part 2, which they literally released, I think, like at the beginning of this month or whatever, which is the realities of like
Yeah,
what is involved.
the
Yeah.
struggle level of developers, artists, everyone. Or for example, the Cyberpunk release.
Yeah.
Everyone just worked their ass off and they didn't make it because of a lot of bugs, because of the management, and then they had to release it and then work again the whole year.
Yeah.
You know, and you rest, and voila. Then you have
And they've been able to
say, you know what, I did this game.
Yeah, but I mean, it was tough because the levels of expectation for that game were through the roof.
Yeah,
And then it was like, I mean, I remember I picked up it for PS4, and like, I mean, that was a joke. I mean, I think I got in a lift, and that was it. And it's like, oh my God, I've been waiting for 2 years to play this at least, and it's crushing for everybody involved, I'm sure. But then how they've managed to reclaim the narrative.
yeah.
I mean, hopefully it's something that, the people at the top of CD Projekt Red, as much as everybody else who was actually affected on it on a day-to-day basis as well, they learn the lessons that they need to learn. And, moving forward, that there's less likelihood of something like that to happen, for something to ship so completely broken. It's because, they've got another Witcher game coming out, and then, they've said they're going to do a Cyberpunk sequel at some stage too. But yeah, I mean, I literally have only revisited that game properly this year. With that.
You like it?
Yeah. I enjoy it. I think it's great. Like, the style is amazing. I'm just kind of figuring out the best build for it, really. Like, how do I, how much am I a melee person? How much am I doing? Like, all of the quick hack stuff is great, but it also kind of feels like a bit of a cheat.
Yeah.
I feel a bit like, well, okay, done. It's like, oh, I didn't need to shoot anything or be good at aiming or anything else at all. So I think that build is possibly a game-breaking build as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going like, okay, let's do an earlier save. But in terms of the storytelling, yeah, I think there's a lot of fun there. Some really great performances in it as well. So yeah, I'm very much enjoying that in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I didn't manage to play the Phantom Liberty, but
No, I haven't yet. People have like raving about that in particular.
yeah, they're like saying that it's worth more than the original Cyberpunk.
Yeah, I think maybe there's something to do with about the fact that it's actually it's a more concentrated story. I mean, I still think it's like 20 hours.
Yeah, something like that.
But I think there's always that tension between an open world game and kind of like this is the linear story, and there's a balance to be struck between that. But I found that, like, I've literally hit that point in the main game in Cyberpunk where it's kind of like you get the warning of like, hi, if you go past this point, then none of the side quests. Make sure that you finished all of your stuff. And I'm like, oh shit, no, right, I need to back out because I've not romanced anybody yet, let alone done like I've got a laundry list of about 80 other missions to do. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to experience the whole rest of what this game has to offer before I then go back and decide who I'm going to blow up, what with who, and anything else like that. So, but no, I mean, I enjoyed that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of cheat codes, I have a question regarding your opinion about the AI technology and how they're like massively conquering the market. There are already a lot of AIs, and I believe that the recent strike in LA also include the voice actors.
Yeah. The SAG-AFTRA kind of like strike. I mean, part of that whole agreement was the whole kind of AI thing, and then there's still, I mean, even now that strike has technically ended, but the agreement that was kind of like reached was a bit like, it doesn't really safeguard anybody a great deal. So that's up in the air, and that's something that we have to be aware about. and it's something that we need to be. I mean, I think regardless of voice actors, first and foremost, it's just something that we all need to kind of like. There needs to be more legislation, like internationally. Like, if I can clone your voice in less than 30 seconds, I can get away with some pretty criminal shit very, very easily. Or confuse people that you know or people that you love that it's you on the end of the phone and get the identification detail. Like, first and foremost, that whole aspect to it, that just needs to be addressed. So somehow it needs to be addressed, because those tools are so readily available for free or for close to being free as well. So it's like, whether you agree with embracing this technology or not, it's kind of like, there's barely anything in place right now to mitigate against this. So that's one issue, which is too big for someone as uneducated as me to explore or say anything articulate other than criminal stuff is bad, and stop pretending to be other people. Bad too. But from a voice acting perspective as well, yeah, obviously it changes the whole thing. I have tried to be proactive as opposed to just waiting. In terms of, like, I've talked to various different voiceover AI providers, essentially, whilst they're figuring out what space there is and what use there is, and is there a use, is there a business model behind the tech that they've created? Because at the moment, a lot of them are kind of like creating this stuff, not exactly in a void, but they're tech companies that are building this product, but then they've got to bring it to market.
Yeah.
And so what's the marketplace? Where do they sell it? How do they sell it? How do they market it? Well, they need investment. So you're seeing a lot of these AI companies being bought by Spotify or other companies, either the tech or the entire company wholesale, or they're hoping that they're going to get investors on board so that they can take it long term. But I'll be honest, like, I've built an AI voice with a company who kind of tried to make it work as a viable option, and are kind of like parking it now.
Whoa.
Because they're like, we tried creating a kind of marketplace and kind of selling this kind of stuff and things, and like the level of interest is like, there's interest, but not to make it worth our while on a business sense.
Yeah.
So it's like, because it's not big enough. Because, and I think this is another thing that a lot of AI voice companies are realizing, is that, like, if you say you can generate thousands of words for free or $5 or $10, then sure, but it means that your bottom line to actually make a profit on any of this is really fucking tough. It's really fucking tough, as well as the whole ethical question. So there's a lot of figuring out in terms of use cases and stuff. So I'm still in dialogue, and there is an AI version of my voice, which is not publicly available to everybody, but is in certain test cases and has been used in certain things as well. And it's still, I'm not trying to push it for any kind of like results, but I'm trying to have like very honest dialogues about, this is the stuff that I would agree to, and this is the stuff that I need control on, and these are the reasons why. Because quite often they don't have any experience or knowledge of the voiceover sector or the business or anything. So therefore it becomes our responsibility, or other organizations who represent voice actors' responsibility, to educate them at the same time. And it's such a kind of like a hair trigger issue. As soon as you mention AI voices, people think of it rightly as a threat. They get very defensive, and it can be easy for it to become a whole pile-on. If you're trying to say like, we're talking with, or, there was a recent, tweet about like SAG-AFTRA, the US American Union, acting union, are reaching a first agreement with an AI voice company. And unsurprisingly, X was full of like really negative posts non-stop for, hours and hours and hours and hours about it. Whereas it was actual fact, just like, they'd made a basic agreement to have quite a good kind of like, have very set terms in terms of where the voice could be used, where it could not be used. These were the set rates, that they were kind of in line with what human rates would be. So all like, in theory, whether you agree with, I'd like to have an AI version of my voice in the first place or not, was quite a healthy step. So yeah, there's a lot to navigate, and I think there's the potential for AI to help voice actors in a lot of things. If I just recorded an 8-hour audiobook that I finished and submitted this morning, I'm sure there are mistakes in those 8 hours that I've done.
Yeah.
Would it be much easier for me having, it's got all of my performance though, all of my emotions and all of my inflections and all of that kind of stuff. If it's just like, you said these 5 words wrong, rather than me having to go manually back and spend an hour or two making sure that I get it exactly how I sounded on that day and all of that kind of stuff, can I just kind of like literally do a kind of audio version of find and replace all to those things, and it just be done like that, so that the client ends up getting the perfect recording quicker, and I don't have to sweat about it. It's just automatically done. Yeah, I'll be down with that. Or, there's AI stuff that can, change certain words, or, so that you record a commercial in one way, but a lot of advertisement is getting hyper personalized. So it's saying the person's voice that it's speaking to. You get an AI to do the person's name, and everything else is the human performance. So there's a kind of a hybrid model there. That kind of stuff makes more sense to me.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of working with big companies, can you or your agent top up the agreement that SEG has with some extra points? For example, when it comes, for example, for AI, because we're talking about the AI, and some sort of company can come with some default properties contract agreement that was confirmed by SEG, but there were some points that you personally want to include. Is this some sort of thing that we can consider it as a usual one? So I mean, the actor can add on top of the contract some minor points. For example, I don't want my voice to be used, for example, in some sort of scenes or etc.
Yeah, no, literally, there's something very specifically that exists. So the National Association for Voice Actors, or NAVA, which is a US-based organization, but actually can represents voice actors internationally. They've created, one of the things that they've created on their website is an AI rider. So it's literally, it's kind of like a list of sub-clauses that you could stick into a contract. So they give you the template, and then you can adjust it depending on how you want to change it. But yeah, it's because you want to have control over where the voice is being used, for how long it's being used for, and the relevant form of compensation as well. Whether or not it's going to be used towards any other kind of machine learning or not. All of these kind of things you would want some level of control over, because I know there are quite a few people that have been screwed over by AI versions of their voice that they can't control. Is like they recorded a project like 10 years ago or 5 years ago, thinking this will never be an issue. I'm never going to have the presence of mind to put an AI rider into the, caveat into these contracts, because it was never an issue before. And then that company has been taken over. They've still, technically got the recordings and it's theirs. And then they've created an AI version of that person's voice, which is technically a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And that's tricky, because obviously that AI voice can say nasty things, which, could completely destroy your career. But also, from a basic point of view, it can just create a normal conflict of interest. If I'm voicing X car company, but then the AI version of my voice is, directly voicing something for a rival, then I'm screwed over. The person who's paying me, who's hiring real Chris for that commercial, will go like, your voice is associated with our direct rivals. We're not going to pay you that money, and we'll take it when we're not going to do this campaign with you. At which point, I'm screwed over and there's an issue. So yeah, that's where the kind of like control and compensation from a business point of view is really important. Yeah.
Kind of interesting. One specific question, because let's get back to the Warhammer series. And
the serious stuff.
Yeah, the serious stuff. I
Cheers.
want you to share some story where you felt you had this significant impact through your work. And why I mentioned the Warhammer 40K, because I don't know if you know or not, but in the field who actually, I'm saying this like preaching the Warhammer to the mass audience is like 3 people that I know. The first one is Henry Cavill, because
Yes. Yep.
the second one is you. And the
Okay.
third one is Siama Peterson, who made the
Oh.
Astartes trailer. way
Yeah.
back.
Which is amazing. Yeah. And
Yeah,
now was hired by
yes.
CW.
He was hired by them. Yeah, and
Yeah.
he did all that stuff by his own.
Yeah.
Like,
Phenomenal.
yeah, and it's a phenomenal thing, and it brings like a new breath to the series, because not a lot of people know the Warhammer series as much as the geeks do, because there are a lot of stuff, and you need to learn, you need to read to get into the point where you can actually understand it.
Yeah.
But for example, because of your shorts, a lot of people start to get to the point and understand what is going on in the books, for example. Because
Yeah, or hopefully they're at least curious.
Yeah.
They're like, what?
At
I
least
mean, what the
they're
hell are they talking about? Yeah.
at least they're curious, especially like how did you voice line the Horus? It's an astonishing stuff, to be honest. And the point is, like, when people start to read it or getting these kind of quotes where like they can directly associate with, for example, with Stoicism, because there are a lot of quotes in Warhammer TK and like directly relate to the Stoicism or Bible or something else.
Yeah.
And because of these things, you made the series a new birth. So the question is, do you feel that impact or not?
No, I'm completely oblivious to everything. I just found it in, mate, to be honest. It's all AI. Hilarious. I mean, yeah, no, I mean, sure. But I mean, that's what attracts me to the writing of those characters. I mean, is all of those, it wrestles with all of the big questions. In one way or the other. I mean, obviously all of the Primarchs have their daddy issues. And that extends throughout all of the space, that they've all got their daddy issues. So that's okay. That's a thing that, people need to work through. They need to work through it, and that's absolutely fine. But yeah, I mean, what I love about that, these hugely fantastical worlds and things like that is that, it does provide, without becoming too much about kind of like a wanky cliche, but a mirror for us to understand our own worlds and our own motivations and all of that kind of stuff. And, is the Emperor a good thing or a bad thing? And he says he's not holy, but at the same time, he has quite a lot of worshippers going on, and, well, all of those different kind of things, and that level of kind of like ambiguity. And, that's what I think is such a testament to the work, is that I can pick up something like, Malcador's, journey to the Golden Throne, and that thing of sacrifice, and that thing of like a real relationship, a real strong bond with another person who isn't blood but feels it, and all of those kind of things. And on the one hand, you go like, well, Malcador's probably like hundreds of years old, and you should probably do some kind of, I don't know, weird old man acting. Fair enough, fine. I can't do that necessarily that well, so it's not my kind of like forte. But the kind of the undercurrent of emotions behind it, plus the way it's written, which I would argue is, Dan Abnett doing his finest kind of stuff. Not too many long words in that one. Some of his other speeches, not so much. But, I mean, it has that real emotional heft and weight. And it's always that kind of stuff that I'm going to share. Like, there's a lot of people suggest stuff to me every day. And there's a lot of just do this one line, or just do this, for Cadia, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, there's nothing personal, but why the fuck? Like literally for me, I've got, there's nothing, if it's not artistically interesting, I'm not going to do it. That doesn't mean I'm only going to do stuff that I really, really get on with, because you don't know until you do it to a degree, but there has to be something that grabs me in the work, whether it's a short bit or a long bit. If it's just like, I want to do the voice because it's funny or because it's a good impression, for me personally, meh. not that exciting to do. The closest I've got to that is probably the one that I'm most quote unquote famous / viral for, which is the Gazcall Thraka thing. Yeah, because that's like, yes, a voice changer has been used. That's not my natural voice. Surprise. Though I voiced several orcs like that in one of the Total War games. But, even that, with his speech, what it's actually about, the mindset of having this kind of thing, this other fucker that you go after endlessly. And he's kind of like, it's not exactly kind of Batman, Joker kind of vibes, but it's kind of like your enemy is the reason for your existence and you can't live with them and you can't live without them. That kind of blood sport mentality and thing like that, I find amazing. So that plus like he's very different to me, so there's a whole physicality behind it. As a challenge, that's an amazing thing to kind of explore. But if he's just if it was just a speech going like, I'm a fucking orc and I like killing people, essentially, and nothing more than that, would be less inclined to do it. Because if you want someone to just do a really good orc voice, they're already out there, and I'm sure they're great. It's more to do with the actual lore and the relationships that excite me. So sorry for being a bit of a broken record, but that's the stuff that interests me most.
Yeah. What's your favorite Primarch and Legion?
Just like the Emperor, I love all my sons. Well, does he have any favorites? Well, maybe just the Rabute. But even then, fucking hell. I'll say my first one, the one that really got me on board is Lorgar. It's partly because everyone loves to hate him. Great, fantastic. Always love an order. He's a weird piece of shit. But the conversation that he has with Magnus in the first Heretic, and when he's just kind of going like, the level of detail of betrayal that he, when he's kind of unpicking every single aspect of his relationship with his father and all of those kind of things. And, you build up this faith. Yeah, Big Emps has maybe hinted that he's not completely on board with the whole idea, but he's not actually explicitly said, Lorgar, please stop fucking doing that. And then he completely wipes out your city and your people and everything that you've set up too. You're kind of a bit like, fair enough. I can see how I might not necessarily respond to that particularly positively. So I would say that had a really early impression for me in terms of like showing me these people are like superhuman monsters. Even the good guys are terribly dysfunctional at the best of times, I would say. But that kind of like little bit of insight in there was kind of like, oh my God. So for that, Angron has his moments, Corvus, Korax, one of the other kind of longer speeches, we were a mistake, brother. We were all a mistake, that kind of thing. Whenever anybody ever feels in their lives like, seem to be a perennial fuck up in some way, shape or form, there's a universality to that sentiment, in a completely otherworld way, but it's so kind of like grounded. Or, Sanguinius's, thing before the kind of like portal, will you run? Like, I'm not going to fucking judge you if you don't come along with that. All of that kind of thing. It goes on for 7 or 8 fucking minutes, but it's brilliantly written. Are all personal highlights, but it was Lorgar that got me in. So it has to be him and his bald head and his weird tattoos. Yeah.
Whoa. And my last question to you for today.
Okay.
I'll try to make it as short as possible because
that's okay. You got 20 minutes.
Okay. So my final question to you is, what advice would you give to those who are starting to voice acting like right today, and what will be your message to this world?
Okay. Oh God. The message to the world is a big elephant in the room. I'll just address that first, like kindness, just be kind. Okay. That kindness, humility, understanding whenever possible. That's always a good thing. And also, check out Warhammer 40k if you haven't, maybe. I don't know. But that's as profound as I feel as if I can get without sounding like a dick. Um, and you know, in terms of something a bit more comfortable about, which is the whole voice acting side of thing, the focus has to be on the acting, not the voice. Broken record, and everybody will tell you, and you'll go, "Oh God, this is so boring." Stop saying that. But yeah, it's true. Like even more so, like with what we're saying with AI, but also in terms of the human nature of storytelling and what people are really going to value, kind of like most. The acting has to come first, and that's regardless of whatever kind of or whatever kind of work that you're in, whether or not that's audiobook stuff or promo or corporates or documentaries or anything, then it's the acting that has to kind of like take precedence. So I'd say working with a good voiceover coach, or working with just a good acting coach before you pay any money for anybody else and anything else. The other thing I would say is like really basically, because people message me every day saying, how do I get into voice acting? And I literally don't have the time to even respond. And I feel bad about it, but it's been happening now for 18 months now. So I'm like, I can't feel bad anymore about this. There are like 50 people a day sending me messages. I literally can't respond, even a copy paste. In that kind of thing, is get fucking curious, because a lot of those answers are out there already. I.e., for example, I've literally got a page on my website which links to 3 free voiceover courses that I've made, which you could just sign up to on Skillshare. And this is my advert, but sign up to whatever platform and sign up for a free trial and cancel it before then, and like rinse 6 or 7 hours worth of content, which would answer a lot of your questions. Or go to, there's literally a website called soyouwannnabeavoiceactor.com.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe have a look at that and see if that answers any kind of things. Because the thing is that for every one person who like seriously doesn't know that this information exists and is coming in from a genuine place and is actually really passionate about it, there are 9 really fucking lazy idiots who are just kind of like actually expecting like, actually, can you like tell me everything that you've done? And it's like, well, I've done podcasts before and actually gone through my entire kind of like process and trained as an actor professionally, and but they don't want that. They just want to like, no, give me the golden ticket now, granddad. And I'm like, I can't. I don't know what else to say to you. Like, first of all, because there's no one way. There's no one way into this. And it depends on the type of voiceover work that you want to do. And I would say, look at the people that you want to emulate, their careers, see what they're doing now, see what they did to get there, but also see, those people who are up and coming now, what are they doing? Because, for example, I can say, Troy Baker is an amazing, I wouldn't mind his career. Sure, fine. But what Troy had to do when he started his career 20 years ago is very different and in a very different landscape to what you now operating in are going to face. There are certain things that you'll do the same, be very good as an actor, first and foremost, but the landscape has changed massively as a result. So you need to be able to do a bit more kind of research and to be a bit more kind of like canny of all of those kind of things. But get it, being curious rather than just asking people the same things like, I don't know how to start. I don't know how to begin. There are enough different ways out there that you can actually find a lot of answers to those questions already, actually. And then it's about going like, what is the stuff that I really want to do? And what would my ideal voice acting career look like? What would it be like? Because for some people, it'll be like, I want to do like 10 minutes of recording and I want to get 20 grand. I want to be like, it's like Nike, just do it. Thanks very much. Done. Right, 50 grand. Right, less is more. Love it, people. Fantastic, and that's their dream. And there are other people who are like, I wanna be narrating this audiobook with writing that I love. I just want to be in my own little world for 8 hours a day, coming up with all of the characters, having a great old time of it, and know that I don't have to worry about paying my bills and I can just get by and all of that kind of stuff. Those are 2 extremes. there's a whole variety within there of all of the different things. Some people want to do loads of different things, and some people want to do just one thing. So I think start to have an idea about what you would like out of it, rather than going again with you getting into that thing of like mistaking other people's goals and things for your own kind of stuff. Like getting curious about what your ideal might actually be, and sometimes you don't know that until you try it, and then you go, "Oh God, never again." With me, that's dubbing. Like I literally just did one workshop, and within like 20 minutes, I was like, I never want to touch this with a barge pole. No idea. No fun. Me no likey. But then there are the other people that I know are just like, oh my God, I just want to be the voice in an anime. Well, great. But, there's no right or wrong there. It's just people who have very different needs.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to lecture that person about what they should be doing in their career, because they probably need to be getting really good at fucking dubbing and watching certain things and building very, very different relationships to someone like me and what my rationale is. Sorry, yeah.
No, it's like, I think it's the essential thing for all type of proficiencies. Like asking everyone how to start and do it actually is like showing up every day, or just ask and do nothing. There's
a little bit. It's just with something like that. Just realistically, maybe some people don't know, or they in terms of like quite how time poor someone like we were able to fit in today, and that's kind of like great. But I'm not like going, I've just got so much time to do the podcast and just talk about myself all of the time. So I can't go out of my way to kind of like, answer their question with a question, which is what I would normally do, which is kind of like, well, what kind of stuff do you want to do? And where are you now? Or what level of experience? And have you worked with an acting coach? Or do you have demos? Do you have a website? Have you got an agent? Have you literally just started out? Do you have any other previous acting experience? Do you have a microphone? Do you have a recording setup? Do you have all of those kind of things? From there, you can maybe begin to have some idea of a plan or an idea. But I ain't going to have ever the time to be able to facilitate that. And neither do I want to become a coach, which is the other option of doing that. There are people who are great, who are out there, who are offering those services, either a lot of advice for free or pay X amount of time very affordably. You get X amount of advice as well. There are some wonderful people in the industry who do that. If you don't know who those people are, talk to as many people as possible, canvass a lot of different opinions, and probably the same names will continue to, come up. But again, that depends on, do you want to work in anime, or do you want to work in audiobooks, or do you want to work in something else? Because there's no point me listing like, here are my 3 go-to people if they are all like, they're all working in video games and you don't want to touch video games with a barge pole. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So again, it becomes about like, okay, so what is it that you ideally want to look for first and foremost, and then you can kind of strategize off the back of that.
Yeah, I see. Wow. Thank you very much for your time, first of all.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks so much for
It was a huge pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Unfortunately, not personally, not offline, but
not this time.
Yeah. Maybe we'll see each other in upcoming conferences. Who knows?
Exactly.
Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And yeah, I really appreciate, how thorough you've been, and all of the process has been great. So really appreciate your time with it as well, man.
I try my best. Because all of these people behind various industries are real heroes. And you said by yourself, you're doing a lot of stuff. You're disciplined as much as possible to become, to climb that mountain. So you deserve to be in the videos, to be in the scene, and everyone must know about you also.
Well, I mean, we'll see. But if hopefully something that I've said might help, other people to get where they need to be, or want to check out whatever it is that they want to kind of like check out. So, as long as you know, I'm inspiring that kind of thing in some way, shape or form, then that's great. Then I feel as if my job's being done. But no, very much appreciate the opportunity. It was lovely to chat as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. See you soon.
Okay. Have a great day. Bye.
Great. Bye-bye.